We've all seen Groundhog Day.
I love this film. I've seen it over 100 times.
But in case you haven't, douchebag Phil Connors, weatherman for Channel 9 Pittsburgh, goes to Puxatawny, Pennsylvania to report on the famous groundhog, Puxatawny Phil. He reports on the groundhog seeing his shadow and desperately tries to go back home. But then the snow comes and Phil is stuck in Puxatawny. He finds himself in a time loop, reliving the same day over and over.
I'm reliving the same day over and over.
So of course he takes this opportunity to have a montage where he's a pervert and a jerk.
I'm not gonna live by their rules anymore.
Then the second montage is Phil committing suicide. Again. And again. And again. Then Phil decides to become a better person. This takes decades or centuries of time loops. Eventually, he helps every person in Puxatawny on Groundhog Day, and the loop is broken. The end, happy ending.
Let's live here.
That is, unless the time loop isn't broken. What if Phil resets every day, but the world keeps moving forward? That means that Phil's actions during the time loop have consequences, and that a copy of Phil must deal with those consequences.
That would mean there would be no consequences, there would be no hangovers, we could do whatever we wanted!
Let's look again at the timeline as presented by the movie. Phil arrives in Puxatawny on February 1st and has a normal day for his first loop. His second day is similar, except for the strong sense of deja vu. On the third loop, he drives drunk, avoids a train, and goes to jail. Then we arrive at what I've dubbed the douchebag montage, which is essentially a montage of Phil doing douchebag things, such as punching out Ned, not doing his job, tricking Nancy into sleeping with him and then proposing to her, stealing from an armored car, and straight up sexually harassing Rita an unknown number of times. Then we get to the suicide montage, and while it's hinted that Phil killed himself in many more ways, the ones that we see in the movie are stealing Puxatawny Phil and driving off of a cliff, dropping a toaster in the bathtub, walking in front of a truck, and jumping off of a building. After that, we get the third montage of the movie, where Phil tries to be a better person by taking piano lessons, trying to save an old man destined for death, and spending possibly centuries of time loops learning everything that happens on Puxatawny that day. By the final loop, he is able to help every single person in Puxatawny while expressing his true love for Rita. The next morning he wakes up and the loop is broken.
Or is it?
Now imagine that the world doesn't loop when Phil does. Let's rework this timeline. The first 2 days have limited consequences. Phil goes about his life like normal. In the third loop, he has to deal with the fact that he got arrested. Now, a copy of Phil has to deal with douchebag Phil. He spends a lot of loops sexually harassing his producer, and that has consequences. Not to mention dealing with the stolen money and the other angry ex-lovers. Also, since he half-assed all of his news reports, he probably got fired from his job. With the next several loops, Phil doesn't have to deal with the consequences. However, his coworkers and family do have to deal with the fact that Phil killed himself for apparently no reason. During the redemption arc, Phil can end similarly to how the movie ended. He thinks the loop is broken and goes about his happy life because he's a better person. But then, the Phil we've been watching loops again and again, supposedly for eternity. The Phil we've been watching stays in this loop forever. Does this theory make sense? There are two very important scenes in the movie that act as evidence for this. The first time Phil commits suicide, we see this.
Phil. He might be okay. Well, no, probably not now.
Then we get this scene later at the end of the suicide montage.
That's him. He was a really, really great guy. I really, really liked him. A lot.
These two scenes are different than the rest of the movie because they show a world after Phil is dead. The world kept moving after Phil died. This shows that Phil is the one looping, not the world. So, is Groundhog Day even darker than previously thought? That's up to you. You don't have to listen to me. I'm just a former film studies minor with no real training.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Do you have another movie you want me to analyze? Leave a comment down below. Check out some of my other videos while you're at it. Please subscribe and hit the dingy ding to be notified of my new videos. Thanks for watching.